There is grandeur in this view of life.
Welcome to Evolution Talk with Rick Coast, an introduction to the oldest story ever told.
Way back in episode 49, almost 100 episodes ago, I talked about evolutionary psychology, and in it I said this.
Traditional psychology asks how it is that we function the way we do. Evolutionary psychology asks why. It also looks at the brain as an information processing device, one that was shaped by natural selection to handle inputs and outputs the way that it does. The neural mechanisms and pathways that are activated at any given moment are solving problems. And some of those problems, or better put, some of the solutions to those problems evolved with us.
Now, to think of it another way, evolutionary psychology helps us to understand our mind and the processes behind it through the lens of evolution. In that episode, I compared the brain to an information processing device. Back in our ancient past, the software that ensured our survival from one day to the next, well, that was pretty basic. All our ancient ancestors needed to do was to survive and reproduce, just like really any other animal on the planet. Things haven't changed. I mean, that's still the function of our software. But that software has evolved. It's changed. It's more complicated than it once was. Not in a more advanced way. That would be a gross overstatement and would imply it's better organized and planned out by somebody or something. It's not. It's the result of hundreds of thousands of years of missteps and mutations and also trial and error. Some code was commented out, meaning it was discarded, and some code persisted if it proved beneficial. And in some cases, that code which was once discarded resurfaced to run again. And that doesn't always work out so well. But as long as it doesn't interfere with survival and the reproduction process, there's a good chance it'll remain. Now, if you're a software developer, you're probably familiar with the term spaghetti code. And that's basically what our running software, the human software, consists of today. It's a bunch of spaghetti code. And today we're going to wade into some deeper waters. Evolutionary psychology helped us along those first few feet away from the shore, maybe up to your stomach, but let's go a bit further. Let's move away from evolutionary psychology, which has been in practice for almost a century, and move into a more recent discipline, evolutionary psychiatry. Now, it's always difficult to nail down a true starting point with certain disciplines, and this is also the case with evolutionary psychiatry. While earlier thinkers explored connections between evolution and mental illness, the late 20th century can be considered the true launching point of modern evolutionary psychiatry. Books such as 1993's Evolutionary Psychology: A New Beginning by John Price and Anthony Stevens can be said to have helped solidify the field as a distinct area of study, as did the late 1990s publication of Darwinian Psychiatry by M.T. McGuire and A. Tracy. And that further established the use of evolutionary principles in understanding mental disorder. Now, these books and others asked, why do mental disorders exist, and could they have been beneficial in the past? Let's go back to that computer analogy. Your brain and my brain are computers, slightly different models that operate on the same principle and the same base code. Evolutionary psychology pokes at that code that was installed by evolution and seeks to understand it. Evolutionary psychiatry troubleshoots the bugs that crop up over time. And it asks, where do those glitches come from and why are they there? Where in that spaghetti code can we tweak a few lines to make things better? Now that we are far from shore, we can begin to ask some questions. A good theory, always starts with a question. So how about this one? Why does a previously advantageous trait provided by our base software become detrimental when the environment changes? When I say that, I mean that environment that's outside of ourselves. Natural selection works with adaptations, and if an adaptation provides a benefit to the organism's survival, it's a good candidate for persistence. If it's disadvantageous, the organism may suffer, and in many cases, that group of organisms becomes extinct. Extinction can occur when the environment an organism finds itself in changes faster than the organism can adapt to it, in an evolutionary sense. But what if it doesn't go extinct? What if those environmental changes don't affect the organism's biological processes as much, but do affect the organism's mental software? What if it affects the code that used to run fine in the past, but now has trouble in a new environment? It can be a mismatch, right? Well, enter evolutionary mismatch theory. It's appropriately named. Evolutionary mismatch theory is the concept that modern mental health issues often stem from our prehistoric brains being in today's world. Much like a fish out of water, our ancient instincts don't always match our modern life's demands. And that's the sound of me tapping away on my favorite social media site. I won't say which one, but I've just published a post about my latest idea on a topic I'm passionate about. 2 minutes later, a comment pops up. The person who wrote the comment rips apart my post and points out everything that's wrong with it, and sometimes what's wrong with me. So how does it make me feel? Well, I feel a bit anxious. It's the same anxiety I'd feel if I ran across a, say, less than favorable comment about my choice of clothes, my accent, or how I style my hair. I'm not saying anything new here, but social media has taken over our lives. Whereas 20 years ago it didn't exist, not in the form it does today. But we can't get away from it now. It dictates the news we see and the information we take in. The technology has enabled it to progress faster than we can adapt to it. Social media anxiety is akin to an ancient alarm system going off because our base software is coded for us to care about social standing and also threats. And it helped us in the past. Our social standing, the code that enabled us to care about our social standing and to form our bonds with others, enabled us to form groups, and our groups helped us avoid threats. And also in the ancient past, some of those threats included things like saber-toothed tigers. Today, those saber-toothed tigers that we sought to avoid, well, now it's online criticism. Our code just can't deal with it. Another glitch we can look at is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD. In our ancient past, rapid attention shifting may have been an extremely advantageous skill when it came to hunting. Our ancestors needed to be on their toes, and they needed to be able to respond quickly to identify potential sources of, say, four-legged protein, things that they were hunting, food that they needed. At the same time, they also had to watch out for threats and dangers, like the saber-toothed tigers I mentioned. They could have been hiding in the grass. But now, take those same lines of code and place them in a modern setting. Those saber-toothed tigers are now gone, as is the constant hunting for food. And it's not fair to say that we can relax now. I mean, we still have concerns and worries, but those lines of code that required us to constantly be on alert isn't exactly as helpful as it used to be. It's not a stretch to say that those ancient lines of code that helped us to rapidly shift our attention to look for threats and also look for food may be what we now refer to as ADHD. It's almost like having a radar that's constantly scanning for threats and opportunities. It was great for our hunter-gatherer ancestors, but those lines of code now pose a challenge in a classroom where focus is key. The information that we learn in a classroom is essential for later survival. If buggy code interferes with that, it could eventually lead to issues or disorders. As we journey through the ancient landscapes of our minds and uncover the roots of our modern mental struggles, it's clear that our psychological traits have stories rooted deep in our evolutionary past. So in the next episode, we'll dive a little deeper into the genetic mysteries and some of the real-world applications of evolutionary psychiatry, unraveling how understanding our ancient past can illuminate the path to innovative treatments and maybe a deeper understanding of ourselves. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Evolution Talk. I'm Rick Coast, and if you find value in this show, please consider becoming a patron at evolutiontalk.com. I'd love to keep this show alive, and I can only do so with your help. Spread the word and share the show with your friends. Share the show with your classmates and also your teachers. At evolutiontalk.com, you'll also find information, some recommended books, and ways to contact me. I'd love to hear from you. And I hope your week's going well, and until next time, please take care of yourself.
Evolution Talk is a Rick Coast production.